So, hello everyone. Good evening. I am Koel Banerjee. A warm welcome to all to this session. I hope I am audible to one of the lecture of 2025, exploring the crucial topic, literature as a catalyst to presented by Dr. Rohan Avivikrama. Before we delve deeper, let me briefly introduce our organization, CSRF. The CSRF, a student-led non-profit founded in 2022, believes in the transformative power of knowledge. We organize free public lectures and discussion on a wide range of cultural topics. Our goal is to empower students by exposing them to new ideas and perspective, hosting critical thinking, and cultivating a deeper understanding of the diverse world around them. And from this session, we are introducing a Google feedback form to gather your valuable views on our lectures. This feedback form will help us improve our offerings to you. The form link will be shared only after the lecture. Now, I am delighted to introduce Dr. Rohan Avivikrama, a distinguished academic and administrator at Sabargamua University of Sri Lanka, SUSL. Starting as a lecturer in English in 2004, he rose to become head of the Department of English Language Teaching and Languages, and subsequently the Dean of the Faculty of Social Sciences and Languages in 2023. His research interests lie in applied linguistics and ELT, including methodology, testing, curriculum designing, and research methods. With a strong publication record in local and international journals, Dr. Ave Vikrama has also held numerous academic and administrative roles at SUSL and has engaged at both national and international levels. His doctoral research at Deakin University, Australia, focused on professional development for university level ESL teachers, highlighting his commitment to advancing English language teaching through scholarship. And join me in warmly welcoming Dr. Rohan Avivikrama to this CSRF talk. I'm really sorry.
Thank you. Thank you very much and for the wonderful introduction. Can you hear me? Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hello, can you hear me? Yes, thank you very much. So I hope you can see me as well. Yes. Right, we'll start the presentation and my talk. And before that, I'm honored to be here today to address this Cultural Studies Research Forum. I believe that is a kind of a professional forum where you discuss many other aspects in relation to teaching, sometimes ESL or literature and so on. Anyway, the title. So if you have any problem with my speech or otherwise my voice is lagging, cannot hear, please let me know. I can turn off my camera, and this will help sometimes enrich the presentation, quality of presentation. Don't keep quiet. If you can't hear anything, because sometimes my voice is lagging, don't keep quiet. Please let me know. Then I can turn off my camera and make it possible. So I am referring to this particular title or the area that I have selected, like literature as a catalyst to ESL mastery, unlocking language through narratives. So I think this title or the theme which I have selected has strong implications, significance for your professional practice, career growth and development. So I will open the slideshow. Career growth and development. We know that now we are being the educationist in the 21st century. We are entrusted with the responsibility of delivering not only the content, but also skills and disposition. So we should try to enhance the skills and dispositions of our students. However, to which extent 21st century educationists, ESL teachers, or literature teachers are aware of this challenge is exactly a question, especially those who are working with Gen Z and also Alpha and Beta, who are considered digital natives with diverse needs and interests. Given this background today, I selected some approaches and also some theories which are vital, in the 21st century, especially for the educationists who are looking for new avenues, new openings to enhance their career growth and development. So with that note, we will start our presentation, and I will incorporate some theories and also some aspects and some concepts in teacher professional development into this presentation, and thereby I can try further to enhance your knowledge and provide you more insights with regard to that's the updating and upgrading ESL and literature industry in the globe. Am I audible? That clear everything? Hello?
Yes, sir, you are.
Yeah, thank you. So this is the overview. I may not do a formal presentation. I mean that it will take nearly 3 to 4 hours to complete these areas. But I will very slightly explain to you and navigate you through these areas. And if you know that after 1 hour and 30 minutes presentation, you can ask any question regarding the area that I focus. So therefore, I will only explain the areas which need some more, that is a detailed discussion. Other areas I will slightly explain to you. But anyway, at the end of the presentation, we have a half an hour Q&A session, and you can ask any questions. I'm pleased to answer any question that you raise with regard to my presentation of the content of presentation. So I will begin my presentation with the 2 positions on the role of literature. So this is very much needed at present. I know only my context, and I have no idea about your context and how ESL and literature, they are taught in your context. So this will further help us understand the 2 positions on the role of literature. And after that, I will explain to you historical background of teaching literature. But anyway, I may not discuss these things in detail. I will send you the presentations and you can read them and understand, because that does not need that much explanation. Then the communicative approach and teaching ESL through literature, and the connection between communicative approach and teaching ESL through literature. And then I move on to benefits of integrating literature into ESL classroom practices. So what are the benefits? So that we should be aware of. And then followed by content of literature. What do you mean by literature? What's the content of literature? And some are not aware of. I think hopefully you are aware of. And next, I will bring some theoretical background, implication of schema theory and constructivism for teaching ESL through literature. What is schema theory? Constructivism. How do we incorporate being ESL practitioners or literature teachers? How do we incorporate these theories into our classroom? Either it can be language classroom or English language classroom, literature classroom. So wherever we need these theories in order to understand the concepts and for teaching and learning. So next, I will introduce theory, approach, method, and techniques in teaching a language. So there are some theories, that these theories, approaches, and methods can only be used in order to teach literature, but some theories can only be used in order to teach ESL. But how do we incorporate? How do we? So what are the theories and approaches and methods and techniques available in teaching ESL through literature? That's the main discourse, today's discourse. Then the next one, approaches to teaching ESL through literature. This is, I will provide more, that means insights in this area, approaches to teaching ESL through literature. I think this requires further, that is analysis, followed by the last point, teaching practicum ESL lesson plan. So I think being teachers, you have prepared many lesson plans, but I don't know how many of you are available preparing lesson plan in order to teach ESL through literature. That's a separate template, separate way of doing so. Because in order to move to number 9, we should have some understanding about 1 to 8. That's why I provided you this overview. We'll try to make this within 1.5 hours. Then we can see what we can do further. So these are the learning outcomes. I may not explain these learning outcomes, but you know that first you look at the first one, how to design course materials to teach English through literature. How to teach course materials to teach English through literature to suit the needs of second language learners at all stages of language learning. So these students may be elementary learners or otherwise that is advanced learners. Sometimes the students may be at the primary level, secondary level, and tertiary level. I mean that at the universities. So you can prepare lessons in order to enhance their that English language knowledge, incorporating literature. You know that that the point here is exactly literature is in Sri Lanka, especially I will explain to you in brief. In Sri Lanka, literature is at present taught separately and ESL is taught separately. But in the past, back in the 18th, 17th and 19th century, this was not the practice, and there English and literature were taught simultaneously and interchangeably in the classroom. These things were not taught separately. That's the question here. So the next one, I think the second point should be the first one. Develop interest and enthusiasm to learn the target language. Target language means literature through literary text. So what do you think of? What is your stance? What do you believe? That means, do you think that these classes, literature and ESL classes, should be together? I mean that exactly literature, ESL should be taught through literature. What do you believe that? So there are two concepts. Are you an essentialist or non-essentialist? There are some arguments, some strongly believe that. Still now, you can find some strongly believe that literature should be taught separately, not in an ESL classroom. And ESL, on the other hand, should be taught separately in another classroom. But these are the two positions on the role of literature. First, you should find you have a favorable attitudes of using literature in ESL classroom or unfavorable attitude. So if you have favorable attitudes, you can find that means at the end of this presentation, if you have unfavorable attitudes, you can have at least develop foster favorable attitude. That's what here mentioned, that I have mentioned that conceptual change. If you think that these things are taught separately, at the end of the presentation, sometimes you can rethink, re-examine your perception. Exactly, there are some benefits. Isn't that so? That is what I mentioned here, conceptual change. You can change conceptually, you know that if after changing your concept, you can change your behavior. Always conceptual change is followed by behavioral change. So with that note, we will start our presentation. Now you can see that scholars highlighted two positions. These are the two positions, essentialist and non-essentialist, right? On the usefulness of literature in language teaching. So I have highlighted in red. You can please pay attention to those areas I have highlighted in red. I have quoted some previous literature, cited previous literature in order to enrich your understanding. You can see that the essentialist position argued that teaching literature can make language learning easier, instill cultural knowledge. So these are the some sort of advantages, promote analytical thinking, and revitalize motivation in EFL, English for Foreign Language, and English for Second Language classroom. So I will further elaborate on these things, how under benefits. So what are the benefits of incorporating literature into ESL classroom and vice versa? So I will explain this in more detail later. So on the other hand, non-essentialists, those who believe that literature should not be used in order to teach ESL, considered zero or limited use of literature in language. So they believe that literature should not be used to teach ESL. So these are the non-essentialist perceptions. Shakespeare's poems might not be so easy to understand for the L2 students. So why do we use Shakespeare's poem? You know that there are 6 periods of literature starting from Elizabethan, now postmodern period. So that is the 7th period of literature, eras, you may call eras. So why can't you select some simple short stories, novels in not Elizabethan period, but sometimes you can select postmodern or modern period. There are many simple texts that you can use. And in selecting literary texts for ESL teaching, you can see whether their availability and also whether their appropriateness. According to the appropriateness, you can select. Why do you bother to select always Shakespeare, right? So then you can see that literary language is viewed as incomprehensible. How do you say literary language is viewed as incomprehensible? You can find millions of, that short stories and poems, very simple ones written by sometimes native speakers or sometimes non-native speakers, which are very useful for teaching ESL through literature. And the next point, the long text of literary works are also often seen as one of the major difficulties. Why do you select long text? You can select very simple text in order to teach literature to ESL through literature. The number one, you have to change your perception and conception followed by your behavioral change. So essentialist perception. So you find that essentialists, those who believe that literature should be used in order to teach ESL. So these are their, I think they are a perception. It promotes knowledge of vocabulary. So I will explain, providing example later. First, let me provide you some theoretical background. It promotes knowledge of vocabulary, phrases and specified expressions. So that means provide some sound knowledge of vocabulary, awareness of language, word classes. I mean that how a word function in a sentence, a phrase, a clause, noun clauses, adjectival clauses, adverbial clauses, and also other than that, pragmatic and social linguistic proficiencies. So I'll explain what you mean by pragmatic and social linguistic proficiencies. In that there are some. I have one slide for this one. What do you mean by social linguistic proficiencies? So how do you understand? So there are two aspects in discourse. I think you are doing discourse analysis. Sometimes you find that in discourse you identify text and context, meaning change according to the text and context. That is we call pragmatic. Providing example, I will try to explain these areas later. And also educational, linguistic, and psychological competencies. So you identify some novels and short stories provide you some psychological competencies. For instance, Aki's short stories help you understand child psychology. Child psychology, that means the psychological competencies. You can further enhance your understanding and your knowledge, which we call personal growth, right? And converts culturally authentic literary texts into EFL classroom. You know that there are many Indian writers. For instance, I like writers like Anita Desai, and also that means who is that who wrote this Village by the Sea? I think who wrote Village by the Sea? Hello, can you follow me? Hello, can
Yes,
you
sir.
hear me?
Yes. Yes.
Who wrote? Who wrote?
It is by Anita Desai, I think.
Anita Desai. Then who is
Yeah.
that? The other, yeah, Anita Desai. Yes. So we will discuss many other aspects as well. So please let me know. You can follow me whether I speak very fast that you cannot understand. Right? I can speak less number of syllables per minute, and I can lower down my that's speed. Then you can understand because I'm trying to cover many areas. That's why I speak fast. I hope you can understand. Please let me know if you cannot understand. Means if I am fast. So then historical background. So historical background of teaching literature. You know that grammar translation method. So this grammar translation method was started back in 2000, that is in the 17th century or 18th century and 19th century. So what do you mean by the grammar translation method? Grammar translation method means translating from uh, one language to another language. So it started with translating Greek and Latin to German. Greek and Latin to German. So German then was the first language. So you can translate from, translate what? Translate literary text. Translating literary text from source language to target language. Sorry, target language to one's mother tongue. So in your case, translating English to sometimes, I don't know whether your first language, all of you Hindi, but there may be some other language. Translating from uh, English to Hindi. So that means that back in the 17th century, 18th and till 19th century, this literature and ESL were taught simultaneous in the same classroom. Because grammar translation method means translating literary text into their mother tongue, translating. So memorization and also translation are the two techniques used. What are the techniques? Memorization and translation. So everything, whatever the things in English were translated into Hindi, or in our case, Sinhala. So that means no any other, I think, aspects. So communication and also communication is not prioritized, was not prioritized, only writing and reading. So this is no cooperative learning, individualized learning, and they take a text and they translate from English to Hindi. That's only happened. So that is means that incorporating literature into ESL teaching and learning. That is how it happened. But later on, these things change gradually. You can see the history, but there are a few slides you can read. This started in 1968, excluding literature from EFL class, curriculum. Started with that. And gradually you can see the changes, and you can see what happened by 1996, right? And by 2000. And finally, in 2005, communicative approach was introduced. Communicative approach. So communicative approach validated the importance of literature for English language teaching. So this is the place by 2005, again, grammarian linguistics. Linguists identified the value of uh, incorporating literature into ESL classroom for teaching and learning with the communicative approach. You know, I think what communicative approach is. Very simply, I explained to you the connection between communicative approach and teaching ESL through literature. So what do you mean by communicative approach? Communicative approach means to enable learners to become communicatively competent. So what do they include? Communicative approach, grammatical competence, social linguistic competence, discourse competence, and strategic competence. So I very slightly explained that uh, these aspects in brief. Grammatical competence. Grammatical competence means ability to use words and rules correctly. So that means word classes, adjectives, nouns, adverbs. So all these things, grammatical competence, your understanding of grammar, how to use them in sentences to create meaningful sentences, and also listening and understanding, reading and understanding, and use them to construct sentences. That is called grammatical competence. What do you mean by social linguistic competence? That is to understand formal and informal situation and accordingly change your language. So you know that polite and impolite social linguistic competence means according to the situation should be able to change your language, phrases, and discourse, whether it is a classroom or whether it's a formal conference, and you change your language that you use. That is we call social linguistic competence. And discourse competence means that ability to use language cohesively and coherently. Discourse competence. There's a one slide to explain this one further. What do you mean by that is the discourse competence? There, I have no time to discuss these things in detail. What is cohesive? and that is coherent and cohesive. I have no time, but anyway, if you need any question with regard to discourse competence, especially cohesively and coherently, I'll explain. Cohesively means linking sentences, and but coherently means yes, coherently means linking sentences. Cohesively means linking ideas in a passage or in one's speaking or speech. And strategic competence means the ability to use appropriate communication strategies. So what sort of communication strategies you can use? So that is means sometimes turn taking in speaking. You know that some back channel supports in speaking, false starts. There are many things that you can say. How do you present your agreement, disagreement, tentative agreement? So there are some, that some communicative, that is a strategic competence that you require. So I will explain these things further if you require. Then, so this means that that's a communicative approach, and teaching ESL through literature means always these two have a strong connection. So what do you mean by this is a communicative approach means enhancing students' grammatical competence, social linguistic competence, discourse competence, and strategic competence. Teaching ESL through literature help always you develop these competencies in students. That's my point. So, Darling, Hammond, and Barrett Snowden 2005 framework of teacher knowledge. What do you mean by teacher knowledge? Now I explained to you this one. Grammatical competence is equal to teacher knowledge. Now 21st century teachers should have a knowledge set. The formal, that's the previous knowledge set. We call it a traditional teacher knowledge set is not adequate. Knowledge framework, traditional teacher knowledge framework that teachers had before the COVID pandemic is currently not adequate in order to disseminate knowledge, skills, attitudes, and also develop the mindsets of the 21st century Z, alpha and beta generation. In the first place, we should understand grammatical competence is equal to, again, teacher's knowledge. What do you mean by teacher knowledge? This framework for preparing teachers for a changing world emphasizes three areas. So before starting, I think teaching ESL or teaching literature or teaching ESL through literature, teachers in general should have these. This is the first three knowledge sets. So first one is knowledge of subject matter and curriculum goal. Knowledge of subject matter means what? Knowledge of subject matter means that is a grammar. If you are teaching grammar, so sometimes teaching methods, right? So you need, but this is a content knowledge means not teaching method. Content knowledge means subject knowledge. If it is science, science concept. It's a mathematical concepts. So knowledge of subject matter and curriculum goal. That is why do you teach? What is a curriculum? Curriculum contains, that curriculum contains number one is syllabus and also evaluation methods. Evaluation methods and also curriculum, evaluation method, that means assessment method, and also syllabus. It includes, curriculum include syllabus and evaluation methods and teaching learning methods, evaluation methods and teaching learning methods. So you should have sound understanding about curriculum goals and learning outcomes. This means generally learning outcomes. And being a teacher, you should have subject knowledge and that also curriculum goals. In addition to that, teachers should have content knowledge and pedagogical knowledge. What do you mean by pedagogical knowledge? Knowledge of teaching methods, grammar translation method, and also communicative approach, or otherwise it can be the direct method or duolingual methods. So that means the teaching, sometimes you have scanning, skimming, that is teaching reading. In order to teach reading, you should have text attack skills, word attack skills, like that. There are some teaching methods that is called pedagogical knowledge. And then that is called CK, PK, and PCK means pedagogical content knowledge. So CK means content knowledge, theories, and then PK means your pedagogical knowledge means the teaching methods. PCK means how do you incorporate CK and PK in order to disseminate knowledge. You know that some teachers are really knowledgeable and they are aware of the teaching methods, but when it comes to teaching, disseminating knowledge, really they are failure. They don't know how to present what they learn to their students. That's why such teachers lack pedagogical content knowledge. But in my case, my point is here, communicative approach means teachers should have thorough understanding about these four: grammatical competence, social linguistic competence, discourse competence, strategic competence, and also what do you mean by grammatical competence? Only number one. So I taught you number 2 and 3 because being teachers, you should be aware of 2 and 3 as well. But here, communicative approach means teachers' knowledge of subject matter and curriculum goals. Now, with this understanding, we will move on to the next one. This is discourse competence. So what do you mean by discourse competence? Now we discuss number 3, the ability to use language cohesively and coherently. So discourse competence is one of the aspects of communicative approach is discourse competence. So discourse competence means understanding, conceptual meaning, prepositional meaning, contextual meaning, and pragmatic meaning. Let's imagine that you are teaching literature, not teaching ESL through literature, but you are teaching a poem, or sometimes it can be a short story or novel. So you should generally have these concepts. For instance, understanding a text involves understanding different kinds of meaning at the same time. Different kind of meaning. Student may question, 4 kind of meaning: conceptual meaning. What do you mean by conceptual meaning? The meaning a word can have on its own. Water. What does that mean? Water alone. It has a one meaning, prepositional meaning, meaning water is placed in a sentence. The meaning a sentence can have its own. And contextual meaning, the meaning a sentence can have only when in context. Number 4, pragmatic meaning, the meaning a sentence has only as a part of interaction between the writer and the reader. I'm sorry, I have no time to explain these things. If you have any question, please let me know later. I'll explain providing example one by one. What do you mean by conceptual meaning and prepositional meaning, contextual meaning, pragmatic meaning? If you have any questions about these things. But my point is, being an ESL teacher, or let's say that you are teaching non-fiction, you are teaching fiction and non-fiction. You know that the difference between fiction and non-fiction. So then if somebody asks, what is this? You can explain to them, this is a conceptual meaning, and this is a professional meaning, how meaning changes, and this is the meaning in context, and this is the meaning, a pragmatic meaning. Only as a part of interaction between the writer and the reader. So pragmatic meaning is by reading a one line or two lines, you can't understand the pragmatic meaning. At the end of a literary text, it's a short story, you can find the exact message. So you may read a poem sometimes 10 times to find pragmatic meaning. It's a very strong sort of, connection, or that is that very rigorous sort of, that rigid kind of, that is a process between whom reader and the writer to understand pragmatic meaning. I think being ESL teachers or literature teachers, literature students, you are trying to understand some poem, some literary text by reading it many times to find, you are finding out pragmatic meaning, not contextual meaning. So I'll come back to this later if time permits. Can you follow me? Hello?
Yes, sir.
Hello?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
Thanks. Right. Let's move on to discourse competence. And then my point is, are they taught separately and simultaneously now? My point is now, I taught you now, I will move back. This is a grammar translation method I explained to you. Grammar during the 19th century or the 17th, 18th century, literature was taught not separately but together. But then by 2005, again, schools or the institution started to introduce literature into ESL class. So this has changed now. So that's what this started with communicative approach. And then I explained to you what communicative approach means. And also the areas that you want to be aware of, especially ESL teacher, you should have thorough understanding of knowledge of subject matter. That means the grammatical competence. Then I explained to you discourse competence, that is a part of that is a communicative approach. Then I asked one question to know, in India, in your context, are they taught separately and simultaneously? Now, in Sri Lanka, they are taught separately. Even at international schools, you find, that they teach London O level or Cambridge O level, or that. But however, there are ESL classes and also literature classes. So, what's the situation in your context? Are they taught separately or simultaneously? Hello?
Sir, actually they are muted. If they want to speak, they can just raise their hand. Yeah, I'm muted. Yes, Asurya.
All
All right, good evening, sir. Thank you for such an insightful session, first of all. And yeah, in our syllabi, they made sure that they teach it simultaneously because we often forget that in day to day languages, we use the language itself in a much more contextualized way rather than going with the grammatical value. So they have taught us simultaneously.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks. So let's see, and if you have any more question later on, we can. This is for understanding. So then these are the benefits. I think you can, anywhere you can discuss benefits of integrating literature into ESL classroom, because I strongly believe that literature can be incorporated into ESL lesson and vice versa. That's what I strongly believe that. So we find that I will explain only the some points. Awareness of language. What do you mean by awareness of language? And especially, so this depends on the context. I don't know whether you are teaching mixed ability groups or advanced learners. Wherever you are, you can find sometimes literary text in order to make them aware of. For the kids, if you are teaching play groups or some other kids, you can teach them. He is a teacher. He is a man to teach them nouns, adverb, adjectives, and sometimes word classes. So this is called language awareness of language. And pragmatic and social linguistic proficiencies. This is the place where I mentioned these. You find that pragmatic and social linguistic competencies. Can you remember conceptual meaning, pragmatic meaning, and these things in the previous slides I told you? You can teach them. This is contextual meaning, the pragmatic meaning. This is prepositional meaning. Likewise, you can teach them and explain to them. So this is what we call pragmatic and social linguistic proficiencies. Linguistic and psychological competencies. I think I explained to you this one. Linguistic and that is psychological competencies in teaching literature. And we can find, provide students with adequate knowledge in this area, psychological competencies. And as I mentioned earlier, converts culturally authentic literary text. So you know that literature is true to life always. Literature is true to life. So we can teach, I'm sorry, I forgot my camera. So culturally authentic text, you know that this is, I remember one novel. Who is this short story? Stench of Kerosene by Amrita Pritam, right? Yes, Stench of, that's the, who is the, that's the short story writer I was previously looking for. Converts culturally authentic literary text into EFL curriculum. So they are very culturally authentic text, very true to life, right? How oppressive culture sometimes they became very that is oppressive culture became really that is really you find that at the end of the short story you find that that is a Gullery happened to commit suicide, even though they have a mutual understanding, love, respect, affection, and everything. Finally, oppressive culture, due to oppressive cultures, he happened to commit suicide. So this is culturally authentic literary text. So we can discuss, and students will be motivated and inspiring literature. That means that we have something to bring, not only Indian context. We find such sort of things in Sri Lankan context as well. Even though Sri Lanka is a very really small country, we find similar context. We call it University of Literature. These things can be applied across the globe, across the world. That's another point. Culturally authentic literary text into EFL curriculum. And Laz, 1993, suggested 5 reasons for integrating literature into ELT. What are the reasons? Expanding student language awareness. This point previously I mentioned because some ideas you find overlap, but this was presented previously. Encouraging language acquisition. So language acquisition, you know that language can be acquired in 2 ways. I'm not teaching the language acquisition, that's a separate subject. But you know that language can, we all learn English as a second language. I hope, right? Our first language is, in my case, Sinhala, and your first language may be some other. There are maybe very few who have who have English as first language, like native speakers. We learn English as second language. That's why we learn English as a second language as a subject. So there are 2 ways of language acquisition. One is interaction, other one is not interaction, nature and nurture. So nature and nurture. Nature means language is inborn, inherent. When the child is born, he is born with language acquisition device. But this language acquisition device function from birth to puberty. That means only 11 years of age. These are not my ideas. These are ideas of the grammarians and linguists. So that means a language acquisition device function from birth to 11 or 12 years of age. So during that time, a child can acquire more than 1 language, sometimes 5 languages simultaneously. That's why bilingual education, multilingual education is very successful in those countries, like in Sri Lanka and India as well. So that is we call language acquisition. One is nature. Nature means children are born with language acquisition device, that function. The second one is nurture. Nurture means interaction. Interaction help language acquisition. So there are 2 ways of acquiring language, nature and nurture. So encouraging language acquisition here means interaction, because nature does not support, because that is inborn. And therefore, this one of the benefits of integrating literature into ESL classroom here means nature, interaction, because you always speak in English, sometimes some other language, but English mostly. So that means interaction, right? In an ESL classroom, you can ask them to write a character sketch and ask them to make a presentation on that's a particular poem. So that means you can make them speak. Providing opportunities means develop interaction. Then the next one, developing student interpretative abilities. You know that many short stories, especially written by Zaki, sometimes the language is maybe difficult. You know that lumber room, or otherwise open window, or you can select a very simple text like for instance romantics, like William Blake, William Wordsworth, especially poems like not London but like upon I wandered long as a cloud and solitary reaper. So they provide you some platform through which you can develop your interpretive skill abilities, your imaginative abilities, and motivating materials. You know that thought not taken. So I have one slide for that. Motivating material, poem like thought not taken. It's a very interesting poem. I love that poem because you can use that poem in order to develop, you know, that change the conception of, you know, that students, you know, that teachers are change agent. Why can't you change students' conception then? Through literature, there are many materials that you can use in order to motivate students. So I give only one example. And finally, educating the entire person. So educating the entire person means, you know, that there are 2 concepts. One is fixed mindset, moving students from fixed mindset to growth mindset. So we are looking for everybody, being teachers or students, we should have growth mindset, not fixed mindset. So literature helps us to make the person whole. That's a perfect person through literature. So there are many other benefits you can find. Mackay 1982 mentioned that 3 major benefits. For instance, fosters learners reading skill, promote tolerance, and learners become creative. Yes, I received a message. I thought that you have some issues with my voice. That's what anyway, thanks. It promotes tolerance. You know that what tolerance means? You know that I don't know whether you have done the short story by not Village by the Sea. So is this George Orwell's short story? What the short story? George Orwell's Village. It's like I can't remember now. Can somebody remind me? George Orwell's not Village by Village. No, I always not Village by the Sea. That short story. Can somebody please? Not shooting an elephant, but you know that it's in the sea. What's George Orwell's short story? No, not George Orwell. He's Ernest Massey. No, I can't remember exactly the writer. That is C. No, that is he's you know that he did not have a fish for 80 days. I can't remember. That is it's a very no. Thank you very much for your this one, but that is not. I will somewhere I will remember these things later. So I will. That is a let you know. Then actually now what happened to this old man? Sorry, old man at the sea. Thank you. Old man and the sea. You know that what happened to old man? Finally, for 80 days he did not have a fish. 84 days, but still he that he believes. He believes that he would be able to find a fish. But 85 days, finally he found one. He brought skeleton to the sea, but however he was successful. You can see the resilience, his tolerance for 85 days. He never gave up. So how do you teach students that is promoting tolerance? Be patient. You can achieve your target. That is not material prosperity. Some believe that achieving material prosperity means winning life. That is not winning life. So in order to teach students these things, do you think that any other materials? There are any other materials? So you know that the value of literature, I can't find anything else. And you can make students very creative. You know that there are in Sri Lanka, I don't know your countries, I think you will have the same thing. There are many criticism. Students lack creativity. They lack critical thinking and creativity, and very much use now AI related applications and tools for mostly for writing. So this has become a huge problem. So what you are supposed to do now, try to use literature, at least if you have no opportunities, within the break, at least you can take a poem and teach them. Small poem, short poem, which has a message, teach them something that they can inspire. Literature encourage same thing, tolerance, promotion of creativity, and transform imaginative energy to students. Inspiring literature. Now, you know that there are some syllabuses, literature syllabus, BA literature syllabus may have some units like inspiring literature. So one unit I have seen, even in developed countries, inspiring literature, transform the entire teaching process into lively exercise. You can do so. So Arthur 1968 discussed three processes of language learning through literature. One is syntactic pattern. So the next one is a large stock of vocabulary and knowledge of other cultures. So I may not discuss these things now in detail since you have some understanding. But anyway, I will take Malay's 2001 that is ideas. He identified the following 7 broad benefits of literature in language learning. So what are those 7 benefits? Universality. As I mentioned earlier, universality means many things happen across the globe. So these things can be generalized. Some stories, novels, characters that you find in the past, that you find at present, you know that in the future, across the board, you can find similar characters, similar stories, similar themes. Even though it happens in India, in Australia, Canada, or African countries, these things can be justified, or that these things may happen anytime, at any place. So that means universality of literature. And the second one is non-triviality. That is really authentic nature, true to life, right? True to life means not larger than life. That is, you can find all characters are human beings. These things happen. And human beings in this world may face the similar things as well, not something different. Then the personal relevance. These stories have personal relevance. And that can be my story, that can be your story, and your family story. And Gulari Manak may be your family members. And also modern literature that you find hard times. And what happened in the Industrial Revolution? What happened during the Industrial Revolution and the poems like London? So you find the same stories. What sort of that is a hard life people had in the UK during the Industrial Revolution and after the Industrial Revolution. You may have personal relevance. Don't you think that people in our country and your country and across the globe they don't have similar issues, similar problems at present now? That's personal relevance. And variety and diversity, diverse themes, diverse issues can be discussed, from uncertainty of war and barren woman, and also that is sexual, that orientation of someone else. Many diverse themes can be discussed, and also interest. And we have, because of this universality, non-priority, personal relevance, and variety, we can maintain the interest. And economy and suggestive power, that's underlying implication. For instance, George Orwell's short story, in simplified version, Animal Farm. It's a real criticism of that is capitalism. Sorry, socialism in then the Soviet Union. Severe criticism using the animals as characters. George Orwell severely criticized socialism. And then uh, ambiguity, multiple interpretation. So you can interpret a novel in diverse ways. We call it divergent thinking. In reading, there are two concepts. One is convergent thinking and divergent thinking. Divergent thinking means you need higher cognition in order to think divergently. So ambiguity means your classroom, the students can provide diverse perception with regard to same point. So that diversity should be always, that you should appreciate. Then there are many other aspects, but I don't take each and everything. I will move to next slides. So then Parkinson and Thoms listed the following 10 benefits of using literature in ESL, but I may not discuss these things because almost it is 7 o'clock, because I have half an hour. Sometimes I may take 45 minutes and give you 15 minutes for questioning, because I have many things to discuss. I'm sorry, I have no time. So anyway, that means before moving to my real that the presentation, still I am trying to make you aware of some areas. So what is the content of literature, you may ask? So when I was a student, when this question was raised, I did not have. So I was trying to explain that it's like prose, it's like non-fiction. So I did not have a proper classification. Then I was trying to figure it out. Then finally, I prepared this nature of that kind of image to explain what the content of literature. So literature can be the prose, poetry, and drama, and prose can be that fiction and non-fiction. And fiction can be novels and short stories. We can further enhance this. And non-fiction, what do you mean by non-fiction? That is argumentative writing, obituaries, or it can be sometimes vacancies, marriage proposal, scientific writings, or narratives, so many things, letter writings, so non-fiction dissertations. So all these things, that we consider them non-fiction. Then poetry can be either ballads, epics, sonnets, and free verse. I'm sorry, I have no time to explain what they are. And drama, comedy, tragedy, and tragicomedy. That drama is written, but usually drama is performed on a stage. Prose means something in verse, and poetry is something in verse, but prose is in passage. So this is the content of literature. And with that, we will move on to schema theory. That being students, you now, that you are students now, currently you are listening exactly, you may be teachers, but for me now, you are kind of, that I don't say that you are students, you may have more knowledge than I have sometimes with not everything, but some areas you have expertise. But anyway, that means that I know that you bring some knowledge to the classroom before starting. Before incorporating literature into ESL classroom, you should know what schema theory. That means, according to schema theory, comprehending a text is an interactive process between the reader's background knowledge and the text. Schema theory, because you bring always, let's say that I teach literature in ESL classroom. Sorry, I teach ESL through literature. So then I should understand your, let's say that if you are my kids, I should know your background knowledge, prior knowledge. What sort of prior knowledge you can bring to the classroom? For instance, I cannot do these presentations to kindergarten students, A-level or O-level students, because I know your knowledge. That's what I just quickly, not quickly, but I just inquired your institution to see your knowledge, what sort of knowledge that you bring to this classroom. Prior knowledge, general knowledge, and sometimes background knowledge. With that, right, with that understanding, I can move. Likewise, your students also bring some understanding with which we start to explain. So in the first phase, they should bring what? They should bring background knowledge or prior knowledge, maybe experience. So with that previously acquired knowledge, we call them, right? And in addition to that, they should also bring previously acquired knowledge structures. Now, for instance, in order to read this one, what do you need? You need previously internalized, we call it internalized knowledge structures. Internalized knowledge structures. Now, let's see that now I speak. I never think in my mother tongue. I speak in English. That means I have already internalized this knowledge. I never think and I speak because like you, I have internalized. So these students also, they bring internalized structures to the classroom. For instance, if you ask your grade 1 students or your kindergarten Montessori students to read this paragraph, can they read? They can't because they have not internalized these rules. But they can read and understand. My teacher is very good. My teacher is handsome. My teacher is beautiful. So they have internalized very simple structure. You know that English has simple, compound, and complex sentence. At this stage, you bring the knowledge of compound and complex sentences, not simple sentences. So that is called schema theory. So knowledge and knowledge structures are called schemata. Knowledge structures. What do you first need? The schema and schemata. And finally, you also need reading strategies. In order to read a poem, short story, drama, novel, or non-fiction, fiction, whatever the things, your students, they require schemata. That means first one, prior knowledge, then the knowledge of structures and reading strategy. Reading strategies means not just skimming and scanning. In addition to that, they require these things. Reading strategies. I'm sorry, I have no time to explain these things, but they should also have reading strategies. What do you mean by reading strategies? Skills involving flexibility of technique, skills of utilizing non-text information, word attack skills, and text attack skills. So now you have these things because you have this knowledge. This is that pedagogical knowledge, PK, pedagogical knowledge. So you have schema, then schemata, knowledge structures, and reading strategy. With that, you can start teaching ESL through literature, right? Any questions so far? Sorry. Thank you, your ideas. You have dropped many messages. Anything? Have you understood so far? Shall I move? Hello.
If anyone has any question, please raise your hand. I will unmute you.
Yes, thanks. Then the constructivist theory. So you learn one thing, that is reading strategies, and then you should have some understanding of constructivist theory. So the constructivist theory is very much useful for teaching ESL and also teaching literature and also teaching ESL through literature as well. So CT is a process in which learners construct new ideas or concepts based on their current past knowledge. Now, for instance, they bring now, I explained to you Anita Desai and all these short story writers, novelists and their background, because I know that for sure you have done these things, and from the messages that you are dropping, I can understand that you have this knowledge. So that you bring some knowledge to the classroom. Constructivism means what do they do? Always they construct new knowledge based on the knowledge that you bring to the classroom. Otherwise, I can't do. Now I am constructing new knowledge in you. And by disseminating these things to you, I am creating new knowledge that you lacked previously. I hope, right? So this is called constructivism. You know simple present tense and simple future, right? Let's imagine that. And you are my kids. Today's my lesson is what? My lesson is teaching if condition, possible condition. But you have brought what? Simple present tense. And also simple future. You have learned. That is, already you have that knowledge. So what I'm supposed to do? I help you connect these two. So for instance, I can mention that if you come to my place, I will teach you. If you come to my place, I will teach you. But you bring, come to my place and we'll teach you. I add only if. That is called constructivism theory. Similarly, this is knowledge construction. In addition to that, I can teach many things using literature. Constructivism. Sometimes your life, I can change your life. That is also constructivism. So there are two psychologists, two very proponent, that is two theorists. One is Piaget, Jean Piaget. The other one is Lev Vygotsky and Piaget. And Piaget, he introduced psychological constructivism, and on the other hand, Lev Vygotsky introduced social constructivism. So please read this and be aware of. Being teachers, we should have thorough understanding about psychological constructivism and social constructivism. I think you remember previously I mentioned that is an interaction. How do we acquire language? By interacting with each other. In an ESL classroom, we can do this one, social constructivism. So Vygotsky believes that by interacting with others, I ask you to make a presentation and make that small speech. So that is a social constructivism. That's what Vygotsky believes. And psychological constructivism means task-based language teaching and learning. Psychological constructivism demonstrates the potential of activities to produce new knowledge with the support of prior knowledge. Task-based language teaching. For a problem solving, that's a task-based language teaching. So I provide you a problem and ask you in a group, you are in a group. And that's a psychological constructivism, right? Because that in order to solve that problem, you need some divergent thinking, psychological constructivism, and also it involves social constructivism as well, because finally you make a presentation, interaction, right? Then theory, approach, method, and techniques in teaching language. You know that you are teaching ESL, you are teaching literature, all ESL through literature. So whatever you teach, you need theory, approach, and method. So what is a theory? What's the approach? And what's the method? So theory is, that I give one example. Theory means, for instance, one theory, I give one example, an approach, method, techniques in teaching a language. One is behaviorism. Behaviorism is a theory. Behaviorism, because it is believed that language can be acquired by forming habits. By forming habits, language can be acquired. That's the theory. by, now for instance, pattern drills. He is a teacher. They are teachers. My mother is a teacher. My father is a teacher. Like that, there are some pattern drills. They are at the garden. My father is at the garden. Likewise, we learn habit formation. By forming habits, language can acquire. So that is called behaviorism. So in note, the behaviorism always aligns with audiolingual method. Behaviorism, audiolingual method, right? Audiolingual method is exactly an approach. That's not a method. Sometimes that is an approach. We call them method, but that's an approach. Then you can find the approach that aligns with audiolingual method and techniques, and finally activities. And you should do the same thing in ESL classroom. Now look at what approaches are. Approaches are the teacher's philosophies of language teaching that can be applied in the classroom by using different techniques of language teaching. They are the approaches. You can see these. I'm sorry, this says that direct method, grammar translation method, audiolingual method. So at the end, method is given, but exactly these are approaches, right? These are approaches. These are methods. Now we can't say that direct approach. That's wrong. But these are approaches, right? So method are the combination of techniques that are used and practiced by the teachers in the classroom in order to teach their students. So let's move on to this one. Now you can see these are the methods and techniques. Communicative approach. So what are the methods? Teacher-centered, student-centered, inquiry-based learning, flipped classroom, cooperative learning, and task-based learning. These are the methods. So student-centered means pair work. Inquiry-based learning means dialogue. And cooperative learning means problem solving. So if you mention teacher-centered, then these are the techniques that align with the teacher-centered. And also you can find communicative approach. Communicative approach is the approach, methods, and techniques. And then you should select what? Activities. So all these things should align your theory, then followed by method, techniques, and activities in your lesson plan. I don't know whether I will have some time to teach this format, lesson planning, how to prepare not ESL classroom. In order to teach ESL through literature, there are some other lesson plan, right? So I'll very quickly move on to the other aspects as well. So these are the things that I want to start. Malay's 1989 critical literary approach. So these approaches can effectively be used in order to teach ESL through literature. So the first, I will discuss few approaches. I may not have time to discuss all the approaches. The critical literary approach. What do you mean by critical literary approach? The study of literature as a cultural artifact focuses on background, plot, literary concepts, motivation, characterization, psychological, and values. You know that I will explain to you one point now. There are some teachers, they teach only literature. There are some teachers, they teach only ESL. But there are some teachers, they teach ESL through literature. Let's imagine that you teach only literature, then critical literary approach can be applied. Only critical literary approach. Because you don't need to combine the stylistic approach, because you only discuss the novel, characterization, themes, background, plot. Because I have no time to explain what plot is. I think you are aware of. If not, I will explain to you later. But you know what plot is. Basic story structure. It has introduction, then that is a introduction, then the rising action, climax, falling action, and finally resolution. That is we call basic story structure plot. So then these concepts are taught a novel. And in Sri Lanka, that's the reason for my worrying in Sri Lanka. Most, that for BA degrees, only these aspects are taught. Only literary text is taught. That they have thorough understanding about these concepts, but sometimes smart students, they can write, but some students, lack, that is a English language proficiency. So sometimes these some teachers, they never use literature for the second point, stylistic approach. My point is, in addition to critical literary approach, same teacher can use stylistic approach. For what? The study of literature as a resource for learning language focuses on the description of the text, analysis of a language, and critical interpretation. For instance, you can take a sentence. He is at the, at the garden. He is at the garden. What do you mean by he? He is a subject. He is the base, that is the be verb, right? Be verb function as a full verb. At the garden is adverbial. In order to teach adverbial clauses, noun clauses, advanced grammar. So for kids, you can teach nouns, that is verbs, adverbs. But for advanced learners, you can teach noun clauses, adverbial clauses, adjectival clauses. There are very valuable resources. But these things don't happen. That's my question. But some, that there's another point, that some teachers who teach literature, only literature, are not aware of these approaches. They are not aware of these approaches, stylistic approach. What do you mean by stylistic approach? So, and they also believe that they should teach only critical literary approach. We are here not to teach language. That's what I mentioned, essentialist and non-essentialist. This is the high time to change our conceptions. Behavioral change. Yes, we should teach both. That we have to change. Then critical literary approach and stylistic approach, according to Malay, 1989. Then 3 models of Cart and Loan for teaching literature. So the first one is cultural model. What do you mean by cultural model? Focuses on providing knowledge of historical background, authors, cultural trends, and certain periods. So for instance, I selected Ice Candy Man, Cracking India. So I learned this novel. That's the deviation in, I think, in India, into Bangladesh and Pakistan, Ice Candy Man, Cracking India, and by Baptist Sidwa, right? Then My Beautiful Laundry by Hani Qureshi. That is the newly found freedom of Muslims in the UK. And also novels like documentary novel like Colombo by Mala. So these things, cultural model, history. If the history is a part of, that's not language, but part of literature classroom. So other than teaching culture, you can use language model as well, according to Hart and Law. Focuses on developing 4 skills: listening, speaking, reading, and writing. It also motivates learners to become creative in language use. So in your lesson plan, you can mention the model. So I have selected, don't you mention I have selected, but you can say model. Sometimes you can mention cultural model, language model, and personal growth model. You simultaneously, you use these 3. Personal growth model as well. What do you mean by personal growth? Aims at students' growth at individuals by inculcating, developing imagination, creativity, and critical thinking. You know that many lack critical thinking and aesthetic taste in their personality. So why can't you do these 3 simultaneously, right? So cultural model, language model, and personal growth model. In your lesson plan, you can include these 3 models. Right? And accordingly, you can select your approach. So these are the approaches. Model means your approaches. Accordingly, you can select what? Your methods, techniques, and activities. So one activity may focus on cultural model, another one language model, and another one personal growth model. So you can align these things. So that's my template actually. Now I just mentioned here as well. Now, for instance, you can take The Road Not Taken by Robert Frost. Have you done this poem earlier? I like this poem very much. You find, I have no time, but therefore very quickly I explain this poem if you have no idea. So you know that there are 2 roads diverge in a yellow. You are standing. There are 2 roads. You know that there are 2 roads. And sorry, I could not travel both. And be one traveler, long I stood and looked down one as far as I could. to where I went in the undergrowth. There are two roads, I can take only one. But I decided to take the one which has not, that much taken by others. There are two roads. One road has taken by many, but there's another road, less number of people, or actually no one has taken that road. But I can't see at the end, because I can't see at the end that there is a bend. After that, I can't see. I don't know if I take this road, what may happen. It's very questionable. I can take a road which has not taken by others, but I can't see beyond that, beyond the bend. If I take this one, what may happen to me? Therefore, finally, many people take the same road, which has taken by many others. But in my case, I took the road. This is not my idea, but I mentioned that the poet says, I took the road. Robert First says, I took the road which has not taken by many. Right? I change. Right? So many people always change the same road which has taken by others. Don't know what may happen. Better to take the same road because many people have taken that one. So they like to change. They don't like change. They like to follow the same thing. So in my case, Robert first mentioned that I took another road. It made all the difference. You look at the last few lines. I doubted, third stanza, last line. I doubted if I should ever come back. Very doubtful. I shall be telling with this aside, somewhere ages and ages hence, two roads diverge in a wood, and I took the ones less traveled by. I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference. So that has made all the difference means I achieved everything in my life, what I expect, not in material prosperity. Sometimes it's spiritual prosperity in his life because I changed something. I did not take the same road. But he mentioned that in the first line of the last stanza, I shall be telling this with a sigh. Why he's repenting? I am worried about not me. I am very happy about my change, but I am worried about millions of other people who take the same road without many changes. I am worried about it. That's what he has mentioned. So this is you find that the road not taken, and this poem, you can use this poem for what? Students' personal and personal growth model to develop their personality. Don't you think so? We can take that in order to develop their personality. So that is another one, three models of Cart and Law for teaching literature, imagination, creativity, and critical thinking. So you can take this Stench of Kerosene by Amrita Pritam in order to teach what? Cultural model. I have given in order to teach cultural model. And I move on to the next one, where six approaches: stylistic approach, reader response approach, language-based approach, critical literary approach, new criticism, and structuralism. There are many, so I may not discuss all these things, and similar things we can see. Many approaches you can see, you can take one of these approaches in order to teach ESL through literature. You can select stylistic approach, or reader response approach, or language-based approach. What do you mean by stylistic approach? Again, the same thing, more or less similar one. Considers literature primarily a discourse and studies it from a linguistic perspective, which means how literary texts demonstrate a system of language. What do you mean by system of language? Sometimes pronunciation, that is a morphemes, how language is formed, word is formed, morphology, and then the affixes, suffixes, prefixes. In order to read these things, you can use language, right? That is called stylistic approach. Then the reader response approach considered literature and interaction between the text and the reader, or what changes occur in reader's mind while reading a text. You know that sometimes reader response approach means we also have similar experience like here, Robert Frost in our life. Don't you think so? So you had two choices in your life. You are in a dilemma. You had two choices. But what should I do? Making a decision. Sometimes sometimes you make the same decision like others take. Two job opportunities, two other equal opportunities. But based on your others' experience, you may take a decision. So similarly, now while reading a text, literature, a novel, especially, you may recollect your past memories. Consider literature and interaction between the text and the reader, or what changes occur in reader's mind while reading a text. So you can ask them some questions. You can ask them some questions to know his or her ideas. Sometimes they may have similar experience, past experience. You can share their experience. And finally, language-based approach. Consider literature an excellent vehicle for communicate language teaching methods that result in full-scale English language development. Right. So then I will move on to critical literary approach and new criticism, personal relevance. So I have no time to discuss all these things, but you can see I will only explain critical literary approach, only this one. Motivate students to learn how texts are associated with issues of class, culture, identity, gender, ethnicity, religion, and political power. So this is we call critical literary approach. You can select a novel. After that, you can see, right, I want to teach political power. Then what should you select? Critical literary approach. You want to teach what? Ethnicity, religion, gender, culture, identity, sexual orientation, class and caste issues. So that is critical literary approach. And for that thing, you can't select the reader response approach or stylistic approach or language-based approach. So based on your learning outcomes, you can select whether it is critical literary approach or any other approach. It depends. So I will not discuss structuralism and these aspects. So then I think within 1 hour, I was able to reach my target. Now this is the case. If you are now asked you to do this activity, you should have some knowledge to do this. Suppose that you have been assigned to teach ESL literature. Now, identify a target group, objectives, and learning outcomes of the lesson. Select a poem or extracts from the poem to achieve the identified outcomes. Explain the reason for selecting the poem. Identify an approach or approaches, methods or techniques relevant to the lesson and explain their relevance in brief. Design 3 activities to achieve the intended learning outcomes. Now you find that all these things align. First, you should identify your target group, university students, and you have identified target group. And what are the objectives, right? You should identify the objectives. Now, teaching gender, previously we learned cultural. Now, let's say that you are like here. Now now like here, let's say learning outcome is should develop students understanding of political power and cultural identity. Identity. So likewise, so there are 2 learning outcomes. At the end of the lesson, student will be able to understand or define political power. But political power. So that is one of the learning outcomes. So then accordingly, you can select your texts, right? Your literary text, right? Then select then you select let's say novel. You select a novel and a part of a poem sometimes. Sometimes let's say you want to teach simple present tense. Identify a target group, less proficient learners, sometimes elementary learners, sometimes intermediate learners. You identify a group, intermediate learners. So what's your objective? The first objective is teach them what? Student at the end of the lesson, student will be able to create at the end of the lesson, student will be able to understand simple present verbs. Then use simple present verbs in writing and speaking. Simple present verbs in writing and speaking. Or you can say identify simple present tense verb and use them in writing and speaking. So they are the objectives. Then select a poem or extract from a poem to achieve. Then according to that, you can select a novel or short story, selected part. Then explain the reason for selection. Selection means that is in your syllabus that you have your selection. You can mention you should teach them simple present tense that is in the syllabus. That's why you selected. Then you identify approach. Maybe you can select communicative approach or you can select what? the language-based approach, and accordingly, you can select methods and techniques, and finally, activities. So, so this is what I have to discuss at the end, and almost I have taken 1 hour and 30 minutes. So now time is for discussion. So if you have any question in the areas that I discussed, you can ask question. Thank you very much for listening to me.
Thank you so much, sir. If anyone has any question, please do ask.
I will send you this presentation and recordings, and also I'll give you 1 minute. I will share. I forgot actually.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your insightful lecture. If anyone has any question regarding today's lecture, they can just unmute themselves. I have allowed to them. So you can just unmute yourself and ask, and whether you are not comfortable to talk, just put your query in chat box.
Yes, no problem. So I can answer.
Yeah. Sir, will you please turn on your video?
I'm searching for one template. I'm searching for. Give me 1 minute. I will share it with you.
Okay, sir.
Any question, please? While searching, I can answer your question if you have. I have it, but can't share it. Yes. So this is actually the template. So you can see that is the template. I will send this to you. And this is different from your I don't know what sort of template you use in your country for lesson planning. But usually we use 5Es and some other 5.3s and some other templates. But anyway, this what I have highlighted, you can see grade level, proficiency level, you can write. And the name of the novel or short story you can select. And then the approach or approaches, sometimes you can select 2 or 3 approaches, language-based approach, personal growth approach, likewise. And then you can say that reason for selecting particular approach or approaches. And then the methods, I showed you some methods, techniques, and objectives of the lesson. And lesson planning also, sorry, lesson outcome also. And you can prepare. And finally, you can design your activities actually. These activities, I think this part especially should align with your grade level, grade proficiency level, approach, method, techniques, objectives, learning outcomes, and also the activities should align. So there should be a flow. Then finally, at the end of the day, you can achieve your learning outcomes, and students will be pleased at the end. So I will send this presentation and also this template as well. So they will share with you. So in addition to that, if you have any question, yes, I will send you some descriptive question as well. Yes, I have some questions. So I will send you some questions and question sheets. So that is in relation to this. And for instance, now you can think whether you are essentialist and non-essentialist. I would like to know exactly your stance and what do you believe, because I have no idea about, because I like to share your perception, whether you like to use literature in ESL classroom, although you are essentialist and my lecture help you share, that is a change your perception, that is a favorably. So likewise, if you have any, that perception, I think you can share with you, whether previously you were aware of these things or whether you were not aware of these things, you learn certain things. I like to have some sort of feedback as well. And rather than the questioning, yes, please send me your question, and at the same time, some feedback. And I appreciate your comments. Yes, thanks. So that's the knowledge sharing. Now you mentioned that we have lesson plan with 5 weeks. Thanks, because someday I can, because this experience by working with you now, because you have some insights as well to share with me. I will bring these insights to another lesson. So that other than the financial benefits, so I always that I have always growth mindset wherever I am. So I am a the teacher educator. Therefore, I'm trying to instill some favorable insights in you. Therefore, whatever things that you share with me, your context and your issues and all these things really help me not to criticize, but bring them to other places and discuss these things with my students sometimes. So then I can have some understanding about all these things with other students as well. Yes, any question, please?
Hello, sir. This was an interesting session. So I feel integrating literature into English language classrooms will really benefit the students because, as you said, literature really motivates us, inspires us. It increases the curiosity. For example, when I learned in schools, when I was in school, so we had grammar classes, separate grammar classes, and also the literature, where we were taught pieces of literature, sometimes stories, so short stories, poems we were taught. So I loved literature classes than the grammar classes because in grammar classes we are only taught only rules. These are the rules. These are the so constructions. That's what we were taught. So I believe, especially in higher education, even in schools, even in grammar classes, uh, there could be literature pieces which could be used. For example, when it comes to higher education, in when it comes to technical educational institutes like engineering colleges, universities, they do not give importance to literature. They just teach the communication skills or grammars. Usually, nowadays, they are focusing on communication skills, but they are not including literature. Even they are actually avoiding literature. They are just teaching them communication skills, sometimes grammar and communication skills. So I believe, as you said, uh, even in higher educational institutions like engineering colleges, this literature could be introduced so that students will really love literature and their mindset will be changed. And when we look at some engineering colleges, in some colleges they have the option to take literature in well-known big colleges, but other colleges it's not possible. So I think this session is really wonderful, and I feel we can integrate in when it comes to Indian context, especially in technical institutes too. Students can be taught some pieces of literature that will really change their life. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your that words, and because I always I also that is question this area, but you know that that's at I don't please let me know this as well. For London O level Cambridge syllabuses, that while learning this chemistry, physics, mathematics, IT, and all these subjects, they also learn literature. That's a part of their syllabus. So, but we can't find this in, as you mentioned, in technology, science streams, and I don't know, subject lecturers, content lecturers, they are maybe reluctant to use. But I learned that, but even in the USA, for MBBS, they learn that's a literature. Because the doctors, without human qualities, in spiritual, that values, so that has no sense actually. That's why they have incorporated literature into life, into syllabus. Literature is life. Therefore, we need literature always. That's my point. Thank you very much for your idea. Any other ideas, please?
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Yes, thanks. You can share your experience and you can ask questions and anything you like.
Yes, please
And
go ahead. And
and
also, I
also that
have
is,
shared the. Sir, sorry for the interruption.
yeah,
Also,
yeah.
I have shared the feedback form where you can also write your own things and ask to sir anything. I will forward your questions to direct Rohan sir. So you
Yes.
can use the feedback form for that. Otherwise, you have time now. You can also ask right now if you
Hello,
have
sir.
any
As you have
Yeah.
added, I believe that even in medical education, in all other fields, literature could be integrated. Yeah, as you said, because in science stream, when we move out of arts college, literature is not at all considered. Only few students who have that passion to read, they continue. Even if they are medical students or some other students, they sometimes find time to read literature. But in the mainstream, there is no initiative. No one is considering uh, maybe integrating or just giving them a paper or an option to study literature, especially in other fields in different disciplines. They are not giving. So maybe we should consider it because this will really change the perspective of people, the future generation, thereby developing the society, developing the country. I think this should be considered even by the bureaucrats and people like that, maybe educators as well. Thank you.
Right. Thank you. Thank you for that confirmation. And also, I like to know whether your school curriculum, does it support what sort of curriculum that you have, whether you have same curriculum for international schools and government schools across your country, or whether they have state-wise curriculum. And also the curriculum, does it support your syllabus, does it support teaching ESL through literature? What do you think?
So, in a country, there are different curriculums followed. There are schools which follow Cambridge curriculums for to some extent. But from when it comes to the main classes like 10th, 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th, they follow. We have national syllabuses like CBSE, ICSE. So those syllabuses are there, and we also have state level syllabuses. So it depends. So there are different kinds of schools and different kinds of teaching going on in this country. We don't have not everyone is having the same level of uh, experience. Not everyone is taught the same syllabus. It differs.
So then does the syllabus facilitate teaching ESL through literature? Your syllabus includes some literary text, ESL book or prescribed books? Hello?
Sorry, sir. Can you please repeat the question?
Now, question is like now, I want to know whether your curriculum, your textbook, prescribed textbooks or curriculum, whether your syllabus include any literary materials in ESL textbooks, poems, short stories, and likewise. The government support or I mean that your Ministry of Education supports using literature in ESL class.
Actually, sir, nowadays in my state, which is Tamil Nadu, so here when we take the state syllabus, so everything is incorporated. ESL and grammar, English language teaching, as well as the literature is always taught together nowadays. Each lesson they have divided the unit, the book textbook into different units. They have poem, prose, also grammar, communication skills. So that's how each unit moves nowadays. In normal schools, in state board schools, I think even in CBSE, they don't have separate books for English language and literature. Both are actually integrated. Only maybe in some schools there will be separate classes for grammar and separate communication classes as well. So Nowadays, it's integrated. Usually, the same teacher teaches the literature and the grammar.
So now, so these are my question because you should ask question from me, but I ask question to know these things, and that is another point is now are teachers that is reluctant or whether they like teaching other than teaching the literary text, do they like to do some that is activities to enhance their language through literary text? Hello?
It is
Hello?
again subjective, sir. There are few faculty members who also incorporate different activities and different strategies to teach, but it is very less. Like it depends on whether the faculty member is passionate about teaching.
Right. That's the case. That's what I mentioned. So they are, that carried away by the text, sometimes characters and the themes, textual analysis, but they may not be interested in teaching literature, ESL through literature. But it doesn't matter. My point is, it doesn't matter actually. That means that's literature teachers. They may not teach ESL, but anyway, that means if a classroom consists of students who cannot write sometimes simple sentence in English, so why do we teach? That's still literature that we should first enhance their that English language competencies and both simultaneously. That has happened. Some that some universities in Sri Lanka we find that some students some at the university level also some are really good perfect, but some students one or two cases that they cannot that uh, cannot write not simple sentences but cannot write properly in English. So they that they need some classes or some other activities to enhance their linguistic competence other than learning the novel or the texts. So that's my point. Therefore, if we can change these teachers' perception, as you mentioned, that they are passionate, if they are not passionate or if they are unwilling to do so, that is the finally students are penalized. That's my point. If we can inculcate, if you can change this attitude, now we at least we can do some activities to through literary text. So that may not in the syllabus, but teachers can take the responsibility because since they are paid, that we can't. Why can't we do this nature of things at least? Not special classes, but within the classroom. Uh, Other than doing some, that some other questions, why can't we do this nature of things in order to enhance their language competencies as well? That is a discussion, providing personal growth, or this other critical approach. These approaches are fine, but at the same time, we should try to enhance their English language competencies as well. Otherwise, at the end of the day, teaching literature has no sense if these students cannot perform well or write well because they are teachers of English, not English medium students. So English medium students, those who are offering degree programs in English medium, that's not an issue. The reason is because they may not teach English, but they learn English. They learn from English, but not in English, but they never teach English. That's not a problem. But the problem is even someday you are creating graduates, English graduates, who cannot write that's properly. That is really a problem. That's my question. That's why we should somehow encourage teachers also to do this one through a literary text. Right. Any other question, please?
Anyone else?
Hello, sir. This is Janvi speaking from Karnataka.
Yeah.
Sir,
Yes.
actually, yeah, what you said is true that each and every university used to do some programs to understand each and everything. But in our state, Karnataka, they will do a separate training course for teachers like BED. It means a bachelor's of education, where where the teachers provide us that how to teach from a lower primary to the PG level.
Thank you. Yes. Thanks for your idea.
Sorry, sir.
Thank you. That means So that's a special, the training or?
Sir, it is a special training. The people who completed their graduation, they can take this training. And the people who are interested in the teaching field, those people step in to do BEd, and after that they can go for other post graduation and for PhD and all.
Yes, right. Thank you.
Also, good evening, sir.
Yeah.
Sir, I also want to add one thing here that, like, I believe that our Indian education system is a huge, like, to some extent, a major disadvantage, because especially in our graduation and master's universities, our syllabus is designed in such a complicated and lengthy way that the teachers didn't even get the time to, think and reflect upon these aspects of additional linguistic competencies, like you said, to enhance these competencies of the students. So, like, they're more oriented towards covering the syllabus, like covering the major texts which are being prescribed in the syllabus. So I think that this is a fault of the our education system as well. Like, here I studied from Delhi University, so there I saw that these things the teacher, and I think this is also not the fault of the teacher, because they are we have limited time, and the course is such lengthy and huge, so they are more towards the text, and also the text they taught us is not so, not very elaborative, or not in a sense that we get the actual hold of that text. So that's why now when we are preparing for our UGC net, so we find these things very problematic and difficult, because we didn't get these aspects and concepts clarity from them towards our graduation and in our masters. So when Kalyani ma'am teaches now, so like I especially, and I think all other many other students will find this thing problematic to a certain extent.
Yes, I understand. Thanks. You are referring to external factors, and that may hinder teaching and learning, and especially that things are covering the syllabus and some other complexities always interfere your that is absorbing knowledge, and that is using them appropriately. So these things, I think everywhere you experience these things. Thanks for that point, because that actually that is reminded me one thing, that is engage in research. So if you are interested in this research, I think this area, so you can do a qualitative study or qualitative study, not action research. You can identify teachers' perception. So that you can do a correlational study, or otherwise, even you can do that is experimental research as well, correlational or experimental research or descriptive research you can do, and your participant and qualitative or quantitative research you can do. And you can identify, especially I like to see students, student means not students, but exactly sometimes they may be teachers perception of these things, these aspects. So we identify two aspects. One is their perception of teaching ESL through literature. Are they aware of these conceptions? Are they aware of these these approaches, right? And also you can find that is your study maybe the use of the implication of the study on the effect of the study on the effectiveness of using literature in an ESL, sorry, using using ESL in an ESL, sorry, using ESL in a literature classroom. So that's the basic idea, but you can see that how it works. Whether teachers, students, what are their perception, whether they like teaching ESL. So what are the exact reasons? So there are many other research. So I found I have many research articles, and many research have been done in order to identify that these areas, whether what sort of attitudes that teachers have, what sort of attitude students have. Now you brought out that is, and also that is, as you mentioned, there are some other areas that the government or the admin should focus on. For instance, that is a syllabus, that is a heavy sort of bulky syllabus which should be covered by the lecturers as well. Therefore, they have no time to that is look into all these things and see the proficiencies of students and these things. It's a kind of a universality of literature. It's a common here as well, because a classroom may consist of 50, 60 students. And so teachers have no time to pay individual attention and provide them work, and they should cover the number of literary texts within a given semester. It's very critical point that you brought out. I entirely agree with your point. But anyway, my point here is please engage in research and do some research and see to which extent you can find teachers' ideas, because these ideas are feelings, our emotions. They won't work. We should do a research and logical appeal. Logical appeal means we should write in black and white. We should document our ideas. So you can engage it. So that's the finally you can do. You can engage in a research, take some, that is, there is identify research problem exactly, right? So I have no time to discuss that all these things, but anyway, you can find a research problem, develop then hypothesis, and also research aims, and also research objectives, general objectives and specific objectives. And based on that, you can select your, that is a data collection method, and engage in a research. Even you can do select 10 teachers for qualitative study. Quantitative study means you have to select many teachers. Your sample should be higher than qualitative study. Then you can engage in a research and see how it works, and whether teachers are reluctant or whether they like. Now your point, because it made me think, because they like to incorporate literature into ESL classroom, but the problem is they can't do so because of these external determinants and practical scenarios, difficulties. So then you can find it and write it in and document it. So the authority, so someone will look into this. Thank you. Your point. I have received another message. Yes.
Sir, only we
Yeah.
have 7 minutes left, so
Yes. Okay. If you have no problem, so we can wind up. Any other question? That thank you very much. Then if you have some protocols, you can do. So anyway, that means no.
If you have any question, you can just use the feedback form. You can just put your question there. I will forward it to sir. Okay, don't
Okay.
worry. Thank you, sir. Sir, can you just stop sharing your screen? Thank you. So it was really an insightful session. So on behalf of our organization CSRF and Wealth Education Private Limited, I would like to express our sincere gratitude to Dr. Rohan Avivikrama for his insightful and engaging lecture. His presentation beautifully illuminated the powerful role that literature plays in language acquisition. We are especially thankful for his ability to connect with our audience, making complex concepts accessible and inspiring a renewed appreciation for the power of storytelling. Thank you so much, sir, for joining here with us and taking it really in a grand level. And thank you, Kalani ma'am and Anand sir, for your support and all the participants as well. Thank you.
So thank you very much providing this opportunity actually. So such knowledge sharing session. Thank you very much the entire institution, and I know that what's her name? I can't remember now. That's your managing director. That's
Kalani Bhalat, sir.
Yes, Kalyani. I
Dr.
met
Kalani.
Dr. Kalyani at one of the conferences in Nandi. Actually, that's the kind of a connection. Then I think she was not there actually when I was doing the presentation as a keynote speaker. Somebody might have told that I would be a very good resource person for this nature of this is activity. Then what happened was really at the airport, at the Nandi airport, somehow she contacted me and we had a few minutes discussion. So that's a very enthusiastic an entrepreneur that I have met. Thank you very much for selecting me for this nature of workshop, because I was able to at least speak to some foreign students. I considered you. Anyway, thank you very much for Oil, right? What's your name? It's at
Yes, sir.
for
Well,
organizing and calling me and all these things bothering me. So thank you very much for everyone, and good luck with your huge endeavors, and thank you very much. Have a good day. Good night.
thank you, sir. Thank you, everyone.